So yeah, it's really just asking questions of people that really care about it, and because it's so, the thing about wine is it's so diverse and it can be very hard to understand because, you know, it's like the way that the French, Americans, Chileans, Australians market it and label it is really different.
Are these yours?
Mm-hmm. I got them for the table to share.
Okay. So what are things to look for? Like what tastes, flavors, regions? Because backtrack is, you know, like I was saying earlier, Lily drinks beer usually. We'll go to like restaurants and whatnot, and she'll be like, "Oh, I want to try this like fruity thing," and then end up taking my beer. So, you know, and then usually, you know, as far as I'm usually like whiskey or something like that, especially like Scotch and whatnot. And so I understand the differences there and whatnot. It took a while as well, right? But it's not nearly as vast as wine can be.
Like
the variation in flavor.
Yeah.
But there's things that all, I mean, wine is really, really complex as far as all the different places it's made, all the different styles it's made in, but there are some like unifying features. And so, and from there, it makes once you have context, it's easier to branch out. So really, it's just, you know, what are your basic styles of wine? Red wine, white wine. In between is rosé. You have sparkling wine, which is still just wine but with bubbles. And then you have their dessert wine is actually a really, really complex category. But you know, kind of lump it all together as just sweet wine. Nothing, you know, all of those have stellar, amazing examples of what they can be, and all of them have really cheap, crappy examples of what they can be. Most stuff's in the middle.
One thing that he, like, a takeaway that he's given me, and especially without experience, is look for specificity. If you can tell where it's been grown, if they tell you this is the vineyard it's coming from, if they tell you this is the winery it's coming from, and this is the family that's making it, and this is how
That's
many
probably the
cases
single,
there are.
the single greatest determiner of a wine's quality, purely just from looking at the label, is specificity of place. So if it just says like California, no, don't drink that.
Not specific enough.
Not specific. No, that could be anything from anywhere. If it says this single vineyard that's an estate bottled wine from this family in like this region, probably gonna be something that somebody put a lot of love into, and it's probably gonna taste great.
So not even just region, like narrow down.
The narrower, not that some regional wines can't be really good, it's just that if you want assurance of quality, the more specifically you can identify where it's from, that's your gauge
from
of
this grape on this vine on this street.
Right.
Exactly. But here's the thing, though. That's the type of quality you want to try all regions first before you even know which one you like the most. Because if you have a crappy one from a place you would have missed out, a good one.
Curry yogurt.
Curry? I must try some. I love creamy stuff
for
like
me,
curry.
there's kind of two ways to get. Whoa, no, it's in the water.
I'm gonna trade
It's
that.
okay.
I'll keep
Here,
this.
just pour it in the.
I have not drank this yet. Take it, and I'll share from his.
So there's two approaches that I think people get into. One I think is better than the other. What most Americans do, and this is purely because of how Americans have been marketed to, is they kind of pick a grape, like Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon, these are all grapes, and they say, oh, I like that one, that's what I drink now, and then they really limit themselves. Whereas I think what makes a lot more sense is to understand that wine in its most beautiful form it's a lot more than a drink. I mean, wine can just be a drink, that's totally fine if it's just a cheap everyday wine. I drink a lot of those. But wine at its best expresses a sense of place. It tastes unique, and you can't replicate that anywhere else. I love beer, but you can make any beer of any style anywhere in the world.
Any backyard.
Anywhere. You cannot make wine that tastes like Napa Valley wine in France. You cannot make wine that tastes French in Italy. It just doesn't happen.
And why is that?
What the French call terroir. The interaction of like climate, soil, the traditions of the winemaker generally. There's a million factors that go into it. That's kind of the beauty and complexity of it. But that's why blind tasting is a very real art form, a really very real skill, is because like Australian wine just does not taste like Argentinian wine, does not taste like Italian wine.
But it's a matter of like what's in the soil, what's in the air, what's the quality of elevation, how much sunshine.
You put enough chemicals into it, you can kind of flatten that out. But at its best, the most loved wines in the world are the ones that have minimal changes and therefore very individual markers. And they really speak of, oh, this tastes like this place in this tradition, and it's unique. I would say like going by geography as a way of interest. So if any one country just interests you generally, I would say just like spend a little time, say, okay, I want to try the red wines, the white wines from Italy or from France or from California or from Oregon or whatever. If you've got an attachment to a place, start there. And then move on once you feel like you've had a few good examples. I think that allows you a lot more freedom than just saying like, I'm a Chardonnay guy. I just want to only drink Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Then you're just drinking the same stuff all the time. It's not that fun.
No, that's definitely true of whiskey as well, right? You go bourbon, you try this, you try this. I found Scotch, and I was like, specifically, I like Islay Scotches because they're smoky and whatnot, and
especially with the peat involvement.
Exactly.
Taliskers are our favorite, I think, with the peaty ones.
That I understand.
Yeah, and it's the same thing, and the way that Scotch has talked about it, because the thing is,
but the barley can be bought almost anywhere in Scotland. There's no like
but still,
grape grown.
The access to the peat moss and those specific stills. I mean, bourbon can try really hard. Bourbon will never taste like Scotch. Scotch doesn't taste like
they have
bourbon.
their secrets.
Japanese whiskey got really close to tasting like Scotch for a little while, but even they've evolved in their own direction.
Correct.
It's a bit more of a crafted, manipulated thing. It's but then the idea with wine is that the best wines, you just don't do anything to them. Just let the vineyard speak. That's a little bit of marketing BS, but it is still more true for wine than it is for beer or spirits. But the idea that like tequila can only be made in Mexico, right? And it's the identity of Mexican culture as part of it. Like tequila and mezcal are very specific to Mexico. Like Bordeaux is very specific to that region of France, etc. But yeah, if you try something you like, or try a bunch of random stuff, honestly, and then if something like kind of catches you, say, oh man, I tried this Australian wine, it was really good. Just go to other places and say, hey, I tried an Australian wine, do you have any like that? Or is there something else you'd recommend? And just see what other people who care about it and are more experienced have to offer. Guarantee you'll find some stuff that'll get you excited. Most people, the problem with wine is that most people who think they don't like wine just have had really bad wine.
Yeah. And then how do you know if a specific wine is actually like what is representative of that region, you know? And I hope you don't
Just
mind
experience.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind me asking these because I love when people like I don't know, Lily knows for myself, whenever I find something what's the word to use?
Obsess over it?
Obsess over it, right? And so for me, it's rock climbing and then jiu-jitsu for, you know.
Right.
And,
the wine world is definitely built for the obsessive. There is so much to read. There's so much to know.
So maybe we shouldn't get into that.
But if you do, it's a lifelong thing. It's there's always new stuff, and climate change is going to make a big impact on what wines are available. Suddenly, France is going to start tasting. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And Canada might be the next new Burgundy.
Hey, sparkling wine in England right now is amazing. Like, totally a product of climate change.
Understanding that, you know, I like whiskey and Scotch and things like that. What are areas you would recommend? Where should we start?
I would say,
Can we buy Cherry please?
I bought you some, remember?
there's different ways to think about that. As far as just going, like taking the closest step, the flavor of whiskey comes entirely from oak, right? The barrel itself is what you're tasting when you taste Scotch, when you taste bourbon, anything else. So very, excuse me, oak-driven wines like Napa Valley Cabernet, Australian Shiraz, Bordeaux, Burgundy that I can't afford. Like wines
Especially
that are,
French oak.
well, yeah, wines that are very oak-driven will have very similar flavor. You'll get that like toasty vanilla flavor that we all like so much in whiskey.
And
that
they
would
do
be,
char the barrels
right.
to like get more of the oak flavors in.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you were to go get like a serious Napa Cabernet, it would be rich and full-bodied and very mouth-filling, just the way that a Scotch is. It would have actually a very similar flavor profile.
And they may even tell you exactly where the barrel came from.
The problem with those is they get pricey as hell. So just to spend, how much do you really want to invest in wine? There's better values out there, but that would be a fun place to start. Since you know, if you want to do American wine first, California, Oregon, you know, those are the kind of the key places.
But if you want to try like the new up-and-coming spots, New York has
What
Finger
about
Lakes.
Fredericksburg wine?
You know, they do
Into
make
Texas
they
eventually.
make wine there. They do make, the best wines in Texas are actually coming from Lubbock area, in an area called the Texas High Plains. And there's some really impressive stuff. They do. The problem with Texas is that every Texan wants to drink big red wine. Texas is much more suited to making like highly aromatic white wines.
Like Viognier.
Yeah, Viognier and Marsan Roussan, like these like really beautiful kind of oily, like flowery smelling French whites, but Texas oil guys don't want to drink that crap. You know, they want to drink a big old cab, but Texas isn't very suited to grow that kind of thing. So there's a bit of a, that's why Texas has a problem. You can make wine there, but the people who want Texas wine don't want the kind of wine that Texas does best, unfortunately.
Interesting.
Fredericksburg stuff, I haven't had anything yet that I love. McPherson Cellars is the best producer there, but their winery is there, but they get their grapes from better places that are a little further west. Still in Texas, but just not in the hill country. This man though, he's having himself a time.
I actually saw him earlier today.
Pause to look at this guy.
Yeah, he's doing a great job.
All right, buddy.
I think he's just living his best life.
Okay, all right. All right, so aging, you were saying.
Oh, yeah. Like when I went to the Oban distillery in Scotland, one of the biggest jokes they were like saying was how the 14 is the best that they make, and they sell the 18-year ones to Americans for a higher price, just because they know there's a higher demand. Just looking at the year, like the age or the numbers of it all. Even though technically the 14 would be better in taste, by all means, we're willing as Americans to pay more for that number to look bigger. Just like that in wine,
Yeah.
age doesn't necessarily mean high quality. I mean, if it comes from a high quality producer and it was stored
Oh yeah, it
well,
depends. Not every.
then it might be good.
The idea that wine gets quote unquote better with age really depends on what you think better means.
If you like balsamic vinegar,
But yeah, 95% of wine is meant to be drank within a year of release. It's a very few that actually show any sort of improvement. And improvement to a wine drinker is not that it gets bigger or more powerful. It's that it gets more subtle, more nuanced. Actually, I would say as far as just like understanding paradigms, the French didn't invent wine, but they did kind of perfect it. So if you can get a handle on the major regions of France, then you'll have vocabulary for everything else worldwide. Because like everything, Napa Cabernet is based on the style of Bordeaux. Sonoma and Oregon Pinot Noir is based on the style of Burgundy. Everything we do in the United States or in the New World has its roots in French winemaking tradition. So the best thing to do is just, if you really want to get it from like an academic sense, and since you're all doctors, you spend some time in academia, you understand French wine, then everything else will make sense.
oh, interesting.
Also, I think food. The other thing is there's an American concept of wine as a drink, and if I asked an Italian friend once what his favorite Italian wines were, because he's from Italy, he grew up there, and he says, it's like this is like you asking me if I like a ketchup. Maybe, but what do I put in the ketchup? It didn't make sense for him to say what his favorite wine was without attaching food to it, because wine in Europe is not regarded as an independent drink. If you ask any European, Frenchman, Italian, whatever, if you want to get a drink, they think you mean a cocktail. The idea of just having a glass of wine to drink it is a little weird. It's something that goes on the table with food. So the old adage,
Aperitifs and things like that.
right? That's the idea. Is that the aperitif is the independent drink, and then you get into your meal. The wine's part of your meal. The digestif then comes after. That's the kind of the full French and Italian path of doing that. There's an old adage: if it grows together, it goes together. And so if there's a food of a particular winemaking, country that you like,
we could do that.
guaranteed, try the wines that come from there. It'll make sense with the food. They will enhance
Although he
each
has
other.
been just like this when we were on our way.
What's an
over.
example of that?
Oh boy.
Oh, what
Must
is it?
either be a long lasting
Paella in Argentina food is wine.
I would say, yeah, paella. The best things with paella are, because that originates in northwestern Spain, and so like the region of Rías Baixas, they make their famous wine is called Albariño, and so it's a highly aromatic, slightly oily, high acid white wine, and that with paella seafood is incredible, and that's something where both the food enhances the wine and the wine enhances the food.
Oysters and champagne. I didn't know about that until Rick told me.
Oh yeah, and oysters with champagne, oysters with chablis, like any kind of that cold water seafood with these sort of salty, briny northern French white wines is incredible. Lamb and red Burgundy, that's pretty spectacular. Foie gras and poached liver and Sauterne, which is a dessert wine of Bordeaux. That's one of those like heavens partying pairings. Most food and wine is fine together. There's very few bad pairings, but that's one where you're like, I see the light. Now, the other way you can go.
Way to go, Hooters for Dance Booth. Everybody enjoy your meal. We'll catch you on the next lap. Love y'all.
Take care. Bye bye.
Later.
You can go the other way and do. There's sort of things that are completely opposite of that, like sweet German white wine and Szechuan food, unbelievable.
What?
Unbelievable. There was you know Pepper Twins in Houston. So the original one in Montrose. Every Sunday, that was where all the wine geeks sort of like got together,
Wow.
and everybody brought, because their corkage is so cheap. It's like $5 to open your own bottle of wine. So everybody brought their like German Rieslings, and just got like super spicy Szechuan food. It's the most beautiful pairing in the world.
What is it? Is it the like
It's that
mouthfeel,
the sweetness
texture?
of the wine and the
And
freshness of the wine cools the spice, and so it actually makes the complexity of the flavor of the food much more apparent to your palate. It's heavenly.
So it takes the numbness of the Szechuan peppers, drives it down by 10%, adds a little splash of like refreshment.
No, it's magic.
So that your next bite, you're not still stinging numb, but it's like a new
My
sensation.
new favorite
I remember,
discovery.
yeah, you were, when we went to like right before
We went to
COVID
Mala?
hit, we went to Mala Szechuan and
Oh, yeah,
we
yeah,
ordered like
yep.
a white wine.
Yeah, it was a
Real
German.
good.
It was a sparkling German
Real
Riesling.
good.
Here, you guys should try these. These are excellent.
Yeah,
How
that's
did you get into wine, Rick?
just drinking too much.
How does one get into? How else does one get into?
I guess as a career, you know?
Wine. Well, it's fascinating because no one grows up thinking. Well, unless you grow up in a wine region surrounded by winemakers, nobody grows up thinking they want to do that. That's not a normal career
There's like a
path.
smoky taste to the red
Because
wine.
I have a master's degree in classical music performance, but when I was early on in my college days, I was going to expensive music school. I needed some money. Wandered across the street to a fancy looking restaurant. Just said, "Hey, can I work for you guys?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." And so I just did everything there. Happened to be a really nice place with a great wine selection, a really great sommelier, and I just got curious because it's like I'm a geek and I like smart, fancy things. And the smartest person in the restaurant was the wine lady, and so I just asked her questions. Also, my boss was a huge drunk, but he also owned the restaurant, so he could drink any wine he wanted. And so part of my job when I was just like the busboy in this place was keeping his glass full of whatever wine he had chosen, and he really liked like classic European white wines. Excuse me. And he couldn't see the little ice bin where we kept the bottle in, so I'd go fill up his glass as he got trashed while like running the restaurant, and then I'd be like, "Well, for me." And so it's like white Burgundy, white Bordeaux, white Chateauneuf, Alsace wines, all these amazing things. I didn't really have context for them, but I knew I liked them. And so then, fast forward a number of years, trombone didn't go so well for me. Suffered from some nerve damage. Couldn't really make a career out of it anymore.
He had focal
And-
dystonia
yeah.
of the lower lip.
And
And you can't do Botox as a trombonist because then you can't control
Oh, that
the
was-
part that makes the music.
was one of my best friends in undergrad. His sister is now a physician, but she was in med school at the time, and she was just so sure that she knew all the answers to all the things. As
Botox, yeah.
and,
Loosen that up. No.
well, I mentioned this to her, and she's like, "Oh, I just went to a seminar on focal dystonia. The cure is Botox. Done." It's like, this is why you're a med student, not a doctor yet. So it's a little more complicated than that. Kind of throws the baby out with the bathwater. But yeah, so once music became no longer a viable thing, wine was sort of the one thing that had always gotten me as excited. And so I thought I'd just like give it a swing, and so far so good. It's been a really rewarding career.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
It's a very, very risky business to get into initially because it's complicated. You have to personally hoof it, travel enough to get to enough wineries that are worth selling, worth bringing in. They have to either be dissatisfied with their current representation or don't have it at all.
Restaurants do. Yeah.
Well, like winery to distributor to restaurant.
Okay.
So
Wait, so which part of that chain do you operate in? Distributor to
I'm in the
restaurant?
middle, so I distribute from suppliers. So suppliers represent wineries, and then from the suppliers will then funnel into a distributor. So we have within our distribution company, we have like a number of suppliers.
So your company's a distributor.
Yeah. So I sell directly to restaurants and to stores, things like that. To start a business like that is tremendously difficult.
But yours
That's very
was like
risky.
a small.
It is. No, it
distribution
is, and
company.
it's there's only 10 people that work for our whole company in the state, and we're just in California, so we're very, very small. And so that's the thing. We're always kind of walking this tightrope. We've attached ourselves through personal relationships to some outstanding importers, so there's enough demand for what we do to like always keep us going. But the safer thing would be to work for the bigger companies.
Kermit Lynch and Rosenthal. If
Oh, yeah.
you see it's imported by them, likely these are the two big guys that do quality.
Yeah,
things.
that's a little further down the road in wine exploration. But when you start learning importers, oftentimes if you I found this out, like, oh, I like this one, I like this one, I like this wine, all from different countries. Oh, but look, they're all from the same importer because one person did all this traveling,
Selected.
tasted all this stuff, and it all fit with his palate, what he thought was high quality.
And it fits with your palate that you
happens to fit with mine. So the two distributors importers I look for are Kermit Lynch, which is based in Berkeley, and Rosenthal, which is based in New York City. And I would, at this point, if I just saw that they brought it in, I trust it. I know that that's an honest quality from
How do you know they brought it in? Like, it's not on the label.
It is.
Oh,
So international
Okay,
wine
okay.
will always have the back label will be the importer's label. So if you
okay.
go to France, there's only going to be one label on
I
that
wish
one.
we had a bottle with us. Like,
Right.
look there. Yeah.
We need to like stop at the store.
So if you go to the store and you pick up a bottle of California wine,
We do have one in our car.
if there's
I
a
bought
front and a back label, the winery did both of those, right? And the only reason they do a back label is so they can like give you a little description or whatever. And not all wines do that or need to do that. You go to France, there's only one label, but then a French wine in the U.S. will have a back label. That back label's from the import.
It's like, do not drink if you're pregnant sign
there's
comes
that,
on the back
U.S.
label.
Surgeon General says.
Right. Yeah, they always have to have that.
And on the top or the bottom, usually within there, it says imported by.
How good is the like the software and tools that you use on your job?
Well, they could be better.
Maybe there's the opportunity then.
That is actually, I will say, yeah, there is
Maybe not
opportunity
starting
for
the company, but
starting the company is tough. Because you have to know the product. You can't. The people that come from a business side and then try to do wine stuff, I do not care for the way that they run their businesses.
Yeah.
It
Because
does
you're
not.
you're not putting the attention.
No,
to
it doesn't. It
details
doesn't
of
promote
the-
quality. It doesn't form relationships. It simply cranks numbers, and I think it's doing a disservice to our world. Perhaps it's profitable, but if all you care about is money, fine.
Hey, that's
But-
like medicine too. When all of the business people are like, they don't know how medicine actually practicing medicine is.
Right.
Which
And
is why
there's
the Kaiser side is, it's like the company I technically work for is owned by all the partners, and we work in lieu with others, and like with Kaiser and their insurance. So at least like all the doctors will be like, well, damn, we're all gonna rebel because this is something that's catastrophic for us. It actually, you have more say in really bad
So
things.
Lily says I can't make Brussels sprouts like this at home. We're gonna figure out how.
Is it flash fried?
Probably
Maybe
just a lot of
torched
oil.
on
I don't know.
top?
It is so good.
yeah.
It is so
Maybe
good.
torch.
And like,
Right.
well,
For-
like the
no,
oil is
and-
going into all the crevices.
And the
Yes,
Parmesan
it
garlic.
is
High
completely crispy like throughout, right? As opposed to just the outer layer.
Yeah. Or just the
For
top.
some reason, it's able to get everything in
Every
there.
petal is crispy.
Wow.
I know, that's
It's like very
That
well,
was
very well
respectful.
seasoned and flavored.
I think it was good. I personally
you want
like
dessert?
cheese is a little kind of strong, but I really like the cheeses.
These were awesome.
okay.
Lily, what were the?
The sauce board.
Yeah, what were they? This
I don't
was
know.
this
It's
was
like
some sort of
curry
yogurt.
chimichurri sauce, and some red sauce.
Yeah, that was good
Oh,
chimichurri.
Have
verde,
some chimichurri
verde
too.
rojo,
Well, that might have been just us
like
dipping and
red
mixing.
pepper. I think.
It has smoked red pepper in it for sure.
Yeah, verde rojo.
It's good. It's
I'll,
good.
I'll tell you this from the business mind. The two things I don't like about the wine business exist at the highest end and the lowest end in terms of quality. At the lowest end, there's just a whole lot of swill out there that's just manufactured in some nameless, faceless, factory somewhere. It's just a lot of BS, and I think that there's so much good, inexpensive wine made by farmers, made by just like real human beings that does play with food, and it tastes like it should. It tastes like a place. It's too bad that what most people are introduced to is very confectionery. I don't like that, and then I also don't like at the high end. The greatest wines in the world have become, they're no longer for enjoying,
Accessible.
they're for investing, and it's like, it's so stupid. It's just like Bordeaux at its highest, the first growth Bordeaux, 30 years ago, they were pricier, but they were maybe like 2 or 3 times the price of an average bottle. Now they are 1,000 times the price of an average bottle, and people don't drink them. They buy, like, somebody puts a lot of work into making them. There's centuries of tradition in doing this. They get all bought up and put in somebody's basement until 10 years later when they think they can flip it for more. And I think that's a real shame. It's like, the art gallery, like all the incredible paintings that are just in warehouses because they're somebody's investment. It's a way to have like liquid cash instead of being enjoyed and experienced. And I think that sucks.
That's so interesting. The watch, I don't know, scene is very similar.
Sure.
And
Where-
sneakers.
Oh, your sneakers. There you go.
Look at
Yes,
the, like-
yes.
You don't use
Air
them.
Jordans and just stick them in the closet.
trading cards. I mean, a lot of stuff. Yeah.
But trading cards, like, you don't use them on a daily basis. You're not walking on them. You're not consuming. They are something you can play with.
No, but a lot of people like the best trade card collectors will just keep stuff and they'll just like the mint condition ones, are the ones that always sell for the most.
At least theoretically, you could display those, and then they're giving their maximum
You're
benefit.
using them.
Here's an interesting thing you can learn from it. You can enjoy it. when a bottle of wine is just a bottle, and if you don't actually experience it, you're missing out on the best thing about it. And so all these high-end Burgundies, Bordeaux, champagnes, these high-end wines,
You have to
I
make
hate the fact
expensive
that
pee out of it, or else it's not
Well,
being utilized.
this is the thing is-
full circle pee.
it's always the same story. Somebody makes a whole lot of money in whatever business they're in, and then they start hanging out with high society people. They drink fancy wine, and then they're like, "Wow, I can't believe this bottle of wine costs this much." And then somebody alludes to the fact that in 10 years it'll cost more exponentially, and they're like, "Great, I'll buy 20 cases of this, put it away, cha-ching." It's like you're ruining it for everybody else. You're just like sommeliers today cannot study as effectively as they could a generation ago because we don't have access to the most iconic wines in the world anymore. We just don't. Used to be you could go, yeah. Used to be you could go to a store and buy the best wine in the world for $40-50. Now the best wines in the world cost
20, 30.
yeah, like 2, 3, 4, 5,000 or more. The most expensive wine I had on my restaurant in Houston was the last one was it's $18,000, and
For
it
like a
wasn't
bottle?
yeah, for a bottle.
Holy moly.
And then at Mastro's where I was before, we had an $85,000 bottle.
Jesus Christ.
And-
Don't drop it, man.
No, I know. I was the one who received it off the truck, and it was a little wooden case, but I was just like, ugh. It's from the 1830s too. But it's like I'll never taste that.
Is it
no
a sherry?
one's ever gonna taste that. No, it's actually Bordeaux.
Oh,
It had been rebought. It had never left the winery, and then there's a whole technique of how they preserve it that long by topping off the bottles every couple of years. Like every 10 years, wine will evaporate, right? So eventually it's all going to go bad. It can't last forever. But you pop the cork, you top it off with another bottle of the same vintage, put the cork back in, you can prolong it. This makes them theoretically it can age forever, but it also gets pricey. But I just
Because your one bottle has like 10 bottles worth in it.
right, exactly. So you're always sacrificing, and
the
you,
angel's share keeps
Yeah.
getting replenished.
So for me, wine should be it's a beautiful thing, it's a complex thing, it's a thing worth talking about, but it's a thing that should be enjoyed with food, with friends. I don't like the two
Better share
extremes.
than alone in a
There's
closet.
way too much cheap crap out there when there doesn't need to be, and there's the investment side of it is no fun at all. But a fun documentary. It's called Sour Grapes, and it's about this guy named Rudy Kurniawan. I think he was Malaysian. He had built this business of counterfeiting high-end wines. He was also a very, very good salesman. He worked in the auction business, so he'd like buy stuff, sell it, resell it later, do that whole thing. But he'd also make fake bottles, and he had this whole forensic, amazing way of doing it. But eventually, he pissed off one of the Koch brothers, and they sent somebody after him, and he got caught and went to jail for 10 years. He just got released and deported to Malaysia. Fascinating documentary.
Everybody that's like that, I wonder like what they would be if they were like straight
Right?
and narrow.
Could have been amazing at something legitimate. Because yeah, it's hard to fake. Because he not only faked the labels, he faked the flavors. He did all this chemistry to figure out how to make passable copies, which is insane.
That means he had to have drank.
No,
that to know what
by
it
all
tastes
accounts,
like.
he was a genius, and he had an amazing palate. He just he pissed off the wrong people. He was successful at this for decades, and then you piss off a very, very wealthy Republican, and you're gonna go down.
That's what we want to do.
Well, this is the story of like Thomas Jefferson's wines. Because there's always Thomas Jefferson was a huge wine collector, and so the story went that his wine collection was found. It was not. I don't think he left anything for anybody. Thomas Jefferson drank a lot, but this guy Rudy was able to convince enough people that he had found Thomas Jefferson's wines, and he got the actual bottles from Chateau Lafite, empty bottles that he then filled, and he distressed the corks, and he recreated the labels based on historical documents. He did so much work to try to, and then he sold this bottle for like $8 million or something to David Koch, and who thought he had like this piece of history. And now it's counterfeit. Yeah. He got
Moral of the
burned.
story is
Inspired
don't piss
to
off
use
the
our
Koch brothers.
wine fridge, wine cooler in our new house.
Oh yeah.
13 Celsius and Camerata are the two best wine bars in Houston by far. They'll do half ounce or half glasses of anything. So you're not out really any money. It's like $4, $5, $6 maybe through your half glass, and you try 3 little ounces of it. If you like it, awesome. Like try more of it, get something else. If not, you move on. We should next time in Houston we'll drink together. We'll have fun. I'll show you the good places.
Specs does have the best whiskeys and scotches.
Oh, yeah.
I missed that one. The downtown Specs is.
Amazing.
How often do you guys come back in town?
The last time I came was January.
You still have family there?
My mom lives out in Conroe.
Okay.
It's a little bit north.
Yeah.
Hey, we went to Lake Conroe.
Yeah, okay.
I've never been to the Specs downtown, but we're usually the one on Holcomb, Bracewood.
Okay.
Around there.
spending?
No, it's not.
Usually the selection of specs is solid. Like they have it's really good representation. They have lots of good stuff. It can be a little chaotic. The one downtown is like the major hub.
Okay.
That's the biggest one. That's the best selection.
That's where I got
And
the
it's-
only like one in stock in Texas of the birthday.
Oh
present
yeah,
for
she
you.
got Well, you're a Scotch guy. My birthday present last year was some Glen.
2 years
It
ago.
was a bottle of Glenfiddich
Before
23. And Glenfiddich 20, there were 5 bottles that came to the state of Texas that year, and she got one. That was, and Dr. Khan was really impressed.
We did how you choose the one.
I didn't know that Dr. Khan
Dr.
was
Khan
like
is also inviting us over to
to do some whiskey stuff.
What a cool guy.
He's great.
I love that man.